Hey everyone, and welcome back. You know that feeling, right, where like your podcast feed is just overflowing with all this self-improvement advice, and you've like practically memorized, the top 10 productivity hacks, but like somehow your to-do list just keeps getting longer and longer.
Oh,
it's like a CVS receipt.
for sure.
So today we are diving deep into what our source is calling the self-optimization trap.
Ooh.
And this is basically where the pursuit of self-improvement kind of becomes more about the feeling of making progress than like actually progressing.
Yeah, it's almost like you get addicted to the idea of improving, but then it never really translates into any real world change.
Exactly.
Like we're just constantly bombarded with all these messages, like be your best self, optimize your life. But it's like almost too much information.
It is.
It's paralyzing.
Yeah, so how does this actually, what does this trap look like in practice?
Well, our source breaks it down into 3 key elements. And the first is this tendency to overthink everything. We get so caught up in trying to find the perfect system or strategy that we never actually start.
Oh, yeah.
It's like spending weeks, researching the best workout routine, but you never actually step foot in the gym.
Ugh, analysis paralysis.
Exactly. And that feeds into the second element, which is the I'm never good enough loop.
Okay.
And this is where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, to these unrealistic standards, especially on social media.
Oh, for sure.
And it just leads to this perpetual sense of inadequacy.
Oh, yeah.
And that can make us hesitant to even begin something new.
Right.
Because we're so afraid we won't measure up.
It's so interesting because it's like the whole self-improvement industry is supposed to, be about building confidence.
Yeah.
But it can actually have the opposite effect sometimes.
Totally. And then there's the third element, which is perhaps the most insidious.
Oh, well.
And that's mistaking learning for doing.
Yeah.
So we devour all these books and podcasts and workshops.
Uh-huh.
We feel like we're accomplishing something, but it's all theoretical. We're not actually applying any of it.
Yeah, it's like watching a documentary about marathon runners and thinking that makes you an athlete.
Exactly.
So why do we fall into this trap?
Right.
Like what's going on in our brains that makes us prioritize like this illusion of progress over actually taking action?
Yeah, well, one key factor is the way our brain's reward system works.
Okay.
You see, every time we encounter information that feels novel or helpful, our brain releases a little hit of dopamine.
Ooh, dopamine.
That's the same neurotransmitter that's associated with pleasure and motivation.
So it's like our brains are rewarding us for consuming self-help content.
Exactly. And because it feels so good, we just crave more and more.
Yeah.
And it can lead to the cycle of endless consumption without actually changing our behavior.
It really does sound like any other addiction then.
It does.
But there's got to be more to it than just dopamine, right?
Yeah, you're right. There is another layer, and our source argues that a lot of this stems from this pervasive myth of perfectionism. We're told that we need to optimize every aspect of ourselves before we can be happy or successful. And that can lead to this real fear of failure and a reluctance to take action unless we can guarantee a flawless outcome.
Wow. So we're stuck in this loop of, seeking that dopamine rush from learning new things, but then also feeling paralyzed by this fear that we're not perfect enough to actually do anything about it.
Yeah.
What a recipe for total stagnation.
It's a real catch-22, but luckily understanding these underlying mechanisms, that's the first step to breaking free.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear it. How do we escape this trap?
Okay, well,
I need my personalized escape plan.
I gotcha. Okay, well, the good news is escaping this trap, it doesn't have to be a huge life overhaul.
Right.
It's more about making subtle but powerful shifts in how we approach, self-improvement.
Okay, I'm ready for my personalized escape plan. What's step 1?
All right, so our source suggests that we start by setting boundaries on self-help consumption.
Okay.
So instead of endlessly scrolling through motivational content or just bouncing from one guru to another,
Yeah.
Choose one resource or strategy and really commit to fully implementing it.
So being more intentional with our self-help intake.
Yeah.
Like a digital detox almost.
Exactly. Think of it savoring a fine meal.
Okay.
You wouldn't want to try to appreciate 5 different dishes all at once. You want to pick one and really focus on its flavors.
I like that analogy. Okay, so quality over quantity when it comes to self-improvement.
Yeah.
What about step 2?
All right, so step 2 is to shift our focus from perfection to progress.
Okay.
So we need to ditch that all or nothing mentality and really embrace the power of what our source calls messy action.
Messy action. Okay. So, but isn't some level of planning and preparation still important?
Yeah.
Like, don't we need to, set ourselves up for success?
Of course, planning has its place, but often we use it as a way to procrastinate or avoid that discomfort of imperfection.
Right.
We tell ourselves, oh, I'll start when I have more time, or I'll do it when I feel more confident.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there's never really a perfect moment.
So we should just jump in, even if we don't feel 100% ready.
Yeah, think about it this way. Most successful people, they didn't start with a flawless plan.
Oh.
They took action, made mistakes, and learned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in those messy, imperfect moments that we really discover our resilience and adaptability.
So it challenges the whole perfect timing myth.
Yeah.
Right? Like we often wait for the ideal circumstances, to align before we take action.
Right.
But it sounds like embracing imperfection is actually key to making real progress.
Absolutely. And it can be so liberating to just let go of that pressure to be perfect.
Yeah.
When we release that expectation, we open ourselves up to possibilities and growth.
Okay. I'm starting to feel more empowered already.
Right.
So we've got intentional consumption, embracing imperfection.
Yeah.
What's the final piece of this puzzle?
Okay, so step 3 is what our source calls the action first rule.
Action first.
Yeah, and it's a very simple but really profound shift in perspective.
Okay.
So before you consume any more self-help content,
Right.
commit to taking one small action towards your goal.
Oh, so it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Taking action before we even allow ourselves to absorb more information.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is that by taking action, however small, we actually create momentum.
Yeah.
We break through that initial inertia and start to build confidence in our ability to make things happen.
Yeah, it's like proving to ourselves that we're not just armchair quarterbacks.
Right.
We're actually players in the game.
Exactly. Think of it this way, knowledge without action,
Yeah.
it's like a seed that never gets planted.
Yeah.
It has the potential to grow, but it won't flourish until it's given the right conditions.
Oh, that's a powerful image. So we're planting that seed with even the smallest action.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious though, for someone who's really stuck in this cycle of overthinking and procrastination.
Right.
How do we help them overcome that initial hurdle? How do we help them break through that resistance to just taking that first step?
It can feel overwhelming, right? Where do you even begin?
It really can.
It's like standing at the bottom of a mountain, and just being how am I going to get all the way up there?
Totally. And my brain just immediately goes to all the worst case scenarios and all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah. And our source suggests that climbing a mountain, it's all about taking it one step at a time.
Okay.
So instead of focusing on that whole journey, break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay.
Think of it as setting micro commitments.
Micro commitments. What is that?
So it's this really powerful way to outsmart our brains, because our brains, they naturally resist change. So instead of trying to force ourselves to make these massive leaps, we start with these tiny actions that feel almost effortless.
So instead of committing to an hour-long workout,
Right.
I would just do 5 minutes of stretching.
Exactly. Or instead of trying to write a whole chapter of a book, just commit to writing one paragraph.
Okay.
The key is to make the action so small that it feels almost impossible to say no.
I like that. And I could definitely see how that would help overcome that initial resistance.
Yeah.
But how do these micro commitments then lead to lasting change?
Well, what's really fascinating is that once we start taking action, even in these small ways,
Yeah.
we start to create this sense of momentum.
Okay.
We build confidence, self-efficacy, which fuels further action.
So it's like that old saying, once you get the ball rolling, it's easier to keep it moving.
Exactly. And as we experience these small wins,
Yeah.
our brain starts to associate action with these positive feelings. So then it becomes more likely that we'll continue to engage in those behaviors.
So it's almost like we're rewiring our brains then to crave the action itself instead of just the information.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So we're shifting from a passive mindset to an active one.
Right.
From being a consumer of information to a creator of results. Okay, so just to recap real quick, we escape the self-optimization trap by setting boundaries on our self-help consumption.
Yeah.
Embracing imperfection and messy action.
Yeah.
And then leveraging the power of these micro commitments to kind of get the ball rolling.
That's it.
What a fantastic framework.
And remember, this isn't about being perfect. Okay? It's about becoming like a better version of ourselves, one small step at a time.
I love that.
Embracing the journey and finding joy in the process of growth.
It's so much more empowering, right? Than like constantly striving for this like unattainable ideal.
For sure.
It sounds like true self-improvement then is more about progress than perfection.
It really is.
I love that. And it's something that we can all cultivate every single day.
So tell me, what is like one micro commitment that you could make today to break free from the self-optimization trap?
Ooh,
What's like one tiny step that you could take towards a goal that you've been putting off?
That's a great question for all of us to ponder. And remember, even the smallest action can create like a ripple effect. It can lead to bigger and bolder changes down the line.
It really can.
So take action, embrace the messiness, and enjoy the journey.
That's it.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive, where we'll be exploring why willpower is a myth
Ooh.
and uncovering what to do instead. See you then.